Nick Ferrari at breakfast on LBC. Call 0345 6060 973.
8 minutes before 8, back to our conversation about oil prices in a moment, but let's get an update on the situation in Ukraine from Defence Secretary Ben Wallace, who joins me now. The Ukrainian military says it's killed more than 11,000 Russian troops since the invasion began. Is that a figure you recognise? Good morning.
Good morning. Look, we can't verify that figure, but I think it is correct to say that the overwhelming sort of single group of people that have lost their lives are the Russian military. They have taken significant casualties because of the poor leadership, the poor plan, the poor equipment, and the arrogance of the Russian leadership in sending them to invade a sovereign country. So, yes, they are taking significant damage. They have stopped that northern column that we've talked about, is still stuck there on day 13. There were reports last night of Ukrainian special forces destroying, I think, 20 or 30 helicopters on the ground in a sort of proper raid behind enemy lines. They are finding it very slow going, and that's mainly because the Ukrainians are doing a very brave and strong fight. It's also because they have the moral component, and the moral component in war can be everything. So it's not going to plan. I can give you briefly where we think they are. They've surrounded a number of cities on the east of the country near the Russian border, Kharkov and Sumy. But what you're finding is Ukrainians are either counterattacking or repelling them when they try and take over the city itself. And that's causing lots of problems, and it's why you're seeing them just indiscriminately starting to shell areas. And it's a clue to the future, which is if Putin is eventually successful, and there is a big if now, of invading Ukraine, the cost it will take him to occupy it and control it will be in the hundreds of thousands of troops will be required. His army is already half worn out. It is in that phase, the occupation phase, that they would lose even greater numbers of soldiers, and slowly but surely his army would be exhausted. And I think that is the bit he hasn't even thought through because of his arrogance that somehow the Ukrainians would welcome as a liberator.
I hear what you say, but that's probably Defence Secretary some time off, and I hear about the moral component. Meanwhile, of course, the moral component doesn't help innocent Ukrainians, some of them women and children, who are being shelled or not killed.
No, it doesn't, which is why we continue to supply lethal aid to the Ukrainians, where our deliveries are continually to get there. The international community is delivering huge amounts now of both military aid and humanitarian aid. It's still coming in through the country. I'm always slightly pleased when I see our in-laws, our anti-tank weapons being delivered into the right hands to do the work that it does, which is to defend themselves from this aggression. And, I'll make a statement to Parliament this week about more details of what more we might be doing and to update the House on exactly how much help we've been giving, because it is important that people recognise Britain has actually led this response. We were the first in Europe. We started training Ukrainian soldiers in non-lethal but nevertheless military skills back in 2015. The Prime Minister hosted the Dutch Prime Minister and the Canadian yesterday about humanitarian steps. We are absolutely coordinating and supporting the work of Europe and the United States. And I think that's something, pride's maybe a bit arrogant to say, but we should be proud that we have taken that step and we've led, because it's about protecting our values.
You reference the House. You'll be aware President Zelensky will address the House later today. It is predicted, Secretary of State, that he will call for a no-fly zone again. I understand that you are still, the British government is opposed to it. If Zelensky were to ask for it, explain the reasons why you would not agree.
Well, I'm in touch with my defence counterpart nearly every day. So far, I haven't been asked by him. I've been asked for weapon systems and I've been asked for other help by him. I think because
there's been no request then from your counterpart in Ukraine for
not from my counterpart in Ukraine. Now, he may request, and I think the battle will develop and people will ask at different times. But at the moment, and I heard on another station a Ukrainian MP calling for it, saying that the missiles were raining down. Missiles and artillery will not be affected by a no-fly zone, and Russia has an overwhelming number of both. That would mean that the Ukrainians would be immediately put at a disadvantage, because the no-fly zone also means that Ukrainians could not fly. And one of the few weapons they have to attack at depth or at long range, artillery or missile systems, are air, either UAV or aircraft. So there would be, in this moment, in my view, a military disadvantage. At the same time, the West can help them have better control over the skies, the Ukrainians, by providing anti-air missiles. Now, the West has provided about 1,000 plus Stinger missiles. The Germans and the Dutch, for example, have provided hundreds. And that is why we see often helicopters being brought down. I know the Polish have provided anti-air, and we will examine what we can provide in that space. So in other words, the best thing for the Ukrainians would be that the Russians can't fly, but the Ukrainians can. And that is why we need to make sure that we help them in maybe another way. But look, we're always open to listen to suggestions, but I also have that very difficult balance that I have to make as Defence Secretary, which is protecting and helping the Ukrainians while also not triggering a wider war in Europe, as my first duty is to protecting and helping the United Kingdom citizens to keep them safe and secure.
I'm sure when Zelensky finishes, there will be a standing ovation for him, and rightly so, in the House. How will you feel knowing that some of those people who are giving the Ukrainian president a standing ovation have perhaps voted against extra funding for your department? Hypocritical, isn't it?
Well, look,
it is hypocritical, Mr. Wallace, isn't it?
Well, Nick, Kipling did a wonderful poem in the 19th century, which is about Tommy Atkins, which is,
yes.
The red coat that's always praised. The band begins to play. It's Tommy this and Tommy that when the band begins to play, but it's we serve no redcoats here. Later on in the pubs, etc. And I think, that is an issue that we all need to address, that our armed forces help us keep safe. They're not the bad guys, they're the good guys. We should always give them everything they need. We shouldn't play top trumps with them. We shouldn't play armchair generals. The people being killed in the Russian army right now are because they were long on numbers, short on equipment, and short on support, enablers, as we call them. And so it's really important that we recognise that as the threat changes, we should change. And I know the Prime Minister's fully behind that. He has given me an extra £24 billion. That's a lot of money on top of our defence budget. We're leading with the biggest, I think, defence budget in Europe. We'll continue to be so. But look, there are obviously people who don't agree with sometimes that. Well, this is the Tommy Atkins moment where they now know what our soldiers can do, and they are keeping them safe right now. And I'd always wish to see them properly funded and supported.
Last couple of points, if I can, Defence Secretary, to the Home Office, where although it has now been increased from 50 to 300, the number of Ukrainians given permission to come into the country, this is against 13,000 plus who have applied. Why so slow, the progress being made there, and how much does it concern you?
Well, I think what we're going to do is, and I know the Home Secretary is determined to speed up the process. So I think for your listeners, the first thing that we should concern about is getting people to safety, getting them out of Ukraine. And I think the Polish and those neighbouring countries are doing an amazing job, and we will support Poland in making sure that they have that help as they need it to manage those people. The second question, and you rightly ask, is about the speed of processing the some 200,000 Ukrainians that could come under the family scheme. And if they come under the humanitarian scheme, it is unlimited. So overall, people shouldn't think that 300 represents what Britain wants. Britain is going to be incredibly generous in this scale. Hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians will be able to come here. The key question here is the speed of processing that visa and whether it's practical to do it in the way that they normally do it in peacetime. And, I know the Home Secretary is determined to fix that. In Afghanistan, if you remember, I sent MOD people to support the processing of visas, not only in the country, but in places in the UK. That offer is there to the Home Office. We'll continue to lean in and support the Home Secretary. But that's the issue here. I know some people wish there were no checks, but I have to balance, and the Home Secretary has the responsibility domestically of balancing security. Just have to make sure people who say who they are, and then we can get on with it. So let's focus on the speed of processing, but let's not underplay the generosity of the United Kingdom.
And lastly, there's a lot of talk in the world of commerce and business about boycotts. I have no knowledge of your personal dietary tastes or habits, but Mr. Wallace, would you be ready to boycott Burger King, McDonald's and Coca-Cola?
I went to a brilliant burger place called Honest Burger last night. It's the best burgers in London. Shouldn't really say that.
Well, you've just increased footfall, I have no doubt.
It's absolutely brilliant.
Where is it?
I don't think there's any.
Where is it?
They're all over. There's one in Brixton, one in Soho, one in.
Oh, it's I'm being told it's
I'm going to do their job for them all over London. I wish there was one in Lancashire. They are delicious, but no, I'm not a vodka drinker either. So, and if I do buy vodka, it's Polish vodka's better than Russian anyhow.
Okay, so you are ready to boycott those firms that will not cease trading with Russia?
Well, I mean, I'll try my best to focus. I don't even know. I mean, I think what I'd say is go and buy homegrown, homebred food.
OK.
Keep it local. That's the better way anyhow. Wherever you buy it from, keep it local.
I'll let you go and enjoy your bacon sandwich. Thank you for your time. 2 minutes after 8. That's Ben Wallace appearing here on LBC. 2 minutes after 8. The news is next.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom, Ukraine says attacks by Russian forces are still preventing civilians from fleeing key cities. The UK